I think to some extent I want to go on from this to talk about three pictures which you're not, unfortunately, going to see in the exhibition today, and then I'll wrap up, okay? How am I going for time? Oh, like that. Okay. These are pictures that I was lucky enough to see. I had a few details. Well, you'll see this next door much better than I can show you here with the wrong colours than the mushroom cloud. I was lucky enough to see these three pictures I'm going to talk about now at the Art Gallery of Hamilton. There was a touring exhibition in Canada a couple of years ago, and that book over there that I just pointed out before is the catalogue that has the products of it, and you'll see those pictures that I'm going to show you here much better in there once my talk is over. And the themes of the final inescapability of the nuclear exchange, in which Kurelek saw the, divine judgment, again reflect this fact that he's like the quintessential artist of Cold War anxiety. But before I show you the picture, I'm going to show you one that gives a similar sense of the willingness to represent the horrors that could be unleashed upon humanity in all its excruciating detail. This is what I thought of when I saw the picture I'm going to show you. This is Jake and Dinos Chapman's Hell. There's a couple of different iterations of it, the first one having burnt down in a warehouse. I saw this in an exhibition a year or two ago, and it's described by a critic, the Chapman work, Hell, as a terrific work of imagination. Its plenitude of barbarity is truly mind-boggling. Every time you think you've got the measure of it, you notice a new, ludicrous yet fearsome, throwaway yet lovingly rendered detail of life in the abyss. And I think something similar could be said about this work here, entitled This is the Nemesis. The colours are wrong, it's raw red when you see it in the catalogue. And it depicts the moment of the annihilation of Hamilton, Ontario, as well as the destruction of Toronto over there in the far distance, from an elevated view on the hills to the south of the city. Well, I saw this in Hamilton, having previously driven up those hills and looked over, so it was quite eerie. And I remember the guide saying, standing in front of this picture, which is enormous, bigger than this in life size, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hamilton." It was drawn to resemble Hamilton as it was at that time. And Kurelek doesn't spare us any of the horrors of this scene, so that the city's factories, the apartment blocks, the railways, the trees and the lakes are all being destroyed, or they're on fire, or they're irretrievably blighted. And there's this intense firestorm raging through the streets of the city, and bloodied bodies of its dead and dying citizens. Those who haven't been killed outright are vomiting blood in its parks. Sorry about this. This is the kind of... or racked with pain on makeshift hospital beds, and we sense their time is short. So Kurelek is bringing this meticulous documentary style to this and many other portraits of nuclear apocalypse. I don't sense there's the same gratuitous intent to these representations as arguably there might be in the case of the Chapman brothers. Kurelek's purpose was precisely, in the words of Carstairs that I mentioned earlier, to quicken our sense of the urgency of the human predicament before it's too late. So yeah, here are some of these awful details from that picture. Really, really horrible. Okay, here's the next picture. It's entitled In the Autumn of Life. And this illustrates another trick that Kurelek brought out from time to time, and it was a favourite of his. That is, of hiding consequential details in his paintings which, to the keen observer, are telltale, but which are easily overlooked in a casual examination. Now, this is a trick that's not unique to Kurelek, and to me, anyway, maybe I'm strange in this way, but it reminds me of the work of Martin Handford. Anyone? Martin Handford? The illustrator of Where's Wally? Oh, it's Where's Waldo in the US, isn't it? We must all be familiar with the crowded scenes within which the bespectacled, distinctively dressed Wally, or Waldo, character awaits detection. So Kurelek was possessed, as I said, of a visual memory retentive of detail, and he often deliberately placed details in his works that he knew might be missed by the unobservant. And in painting, when he painted scenes from his youth, he often depicts himself as the figure which you could easily miss, behind a door, children playing, ignoring him. And then in his maturity, it's often Christ or the crown of thorns or something like this that is hidden, but it's there. In case you haven't spotted the Christ figure in the Autumn of Life yet, while I've been talking, look over here. I'll give you a detail. Okay, there's the figure suspended on the back of the tree to the bottom left of the picture, surrounded by wild dogs, only just invisible, and apparently completely ignored by the group posing for the photograph outside the family home. And he used his own family for this. It's worth adding that Kurelek painted many natural and human landscapes of moving intensity that don't have these subtexts or hidden messages. Yet it's more than playfulness, okay? So it's not really like Where's Wally? What Kurelek is doing is he wants his paintings to repay careful study. And I think if you've been in the... Okay, some people just look at the maze for a minute and go away, and that's fine. Others, you could stand in front of it there for an hour, and certainly I, though I've been here many years, still see things in it that I haven't seen before, and other pictures like it. So Kurelek is prepared to accept the consequence that these details may remain opaque to or misunderstood or completely missed by the casual observer. And I think his view of reality was a bit like this, that reality itself often remained hidden in part or in whole to the majority of his fellow human beings. And his ambition was to reveal it, but not in such a way as to make it completely explicable and to rob it of all mystery and majesty. And he was prepared to do that for light shades and for dark shades. And because this is a Kurelek painting, there's a mushroom cloud at the back of the picture. The coming judgment is never far from his mind. And last picture, second last. I'll try and do this quickly. This is an amazing picture. Again, really huge canvas. I can't do it justice here. You'll just have to go and look at the catalogue afterwards. Harvest of Our Mere Humanism Years is the title. And Kurelek is weaving several dystopian motifs current at the time of his working, this is 1972, into a composition that's truly fantastical. So there's a giant hollow grasshopper here, and the pile of books dressed as an academic in professorial garb, and the green dish that contains replicas of Canada's university buildings in the middle distance, expresses Kurelek's fear that higher education, valued so highly by millions of Canadian parents and in the Western world, in fact did little or nothing to aid their children's search for individuality and significance. And I think here there are echoes, probably unconscious echoes, of the educational, radical educational thinking of the early 70s. Deschooling Society by Ivan Illich and Neil Postman, The End of Education, in which there's an argument about the necessity of a sustaining narrative to endue education with meaning, which I think Kurelek felt had been lost. And there are people glued to television sets or reading newspapers and paying no attention to where they're walking along here. Again, you'll see this in the catalogue, I trust, if you look at it. And therefore completely oblivious to the danger, the chasm that the chasms represent in the earth. Some people have already fell into them. So here's Neil Postman again, amusing yourself to death, another theme that comes out here. And there are people queuing around this building, which is Toronto City Hall, and really does look like that. They're queuing and waiting in this queue, but where are they going? They just come around here and then they fall off the edge. And another thing, look up here. Oh, you can't see it. Oh my word, what a dreadful... Oh no, here it is, just here, it's black. That's the bomb. It's about to drop. And there's only one person in the whole scene, and we really need the original here to see the man. There's one man down here pointing. Only one person sees the bomb. So it's an ultimate symbol of futility. And to me, again, this is reminiscent of something which many, or if not all of you, will have seen before. The animation sequences to the Pink Floyd album, The Wall, okay? And the music video, Another Brick in the Wall. Do you remember? Oh, sorry, here are a few of the details. The newspapers, Toronto City Hall with the bomb. I should have used these while I was talking about them, shouldn't I? Yeah, you remember this. This is very, very distinctive. Teachers are memorably depicted as hammers marching in serried ranks, and school was depicted either as a meat grinder into which students are pushed, and or simply as a high, all-encompassing wall. And I think that actually the educational theorists that I mentioned before are probably all forgotten now, but people still remember. Well, people of a certain age still remember this kind of stuff because it's pop culture, and that's what people get. And I think that's what Kurelek was aiming at. He understood that, and that was his medium. That's what he was trying to do in a picture like that. Okay, well, I've gone well over time, sorry. But I guess we started late, right? If I can just permit me just a few more words out of the maze, and then we'll open it up to discussion, or we'll all go home. So here we've got represented the escape of the rat from its labyrinthine prison, which was depicted in the maze. Kurelek depicts himself as having been put together, or back together, or maybe put together for the first time, and, as we know, attributes the achievement to God rather than to the doctors and the medics and the Maudsley, etc., appreciative as he was of their efforts. Now, I think it's true that we live in an age of suspicion and cynicism, and I think that we also sometimes think that, well, it's our right, really, to examine minutely the lives of people in the public eye, celebrities, stars and such like. And in his time in Canada, at least, Kurelek was in the public eye. A film was made about him, and so everyone, having seen the film, will now have an opinion about how his family worked and whether it was good for him or bad for him or whatever. And some have an opinion about how complete his recovery may have been also. I guess my own opinion on the matter, although it's one that I've formed from some considerable distance from Canada and from all the places where this happened, was that it seems to me that perhaps because of this new project that he took on, to be an artist with that vocation of warning, the retrospective exhibition was called The Messenger. Perhaps because of that, he did undoubtedly recover from the psychological suffering of his youth and young adulthood, but not in such a way as to obliterate or to entirely alter the after effects of that suffering, or to alter his personality or his family history. That's not how recovery worked for him. And I doubt, frankly, whether it's ever really the way recovery from anything really works. The fundamental alteration was not to his personality or to his family. It was to his own perspective on his life history. He got a new one. And I think that alteration can fairly bear the name of recovery.